Everhood is a very unique game set in a surreal world consisting of freaky characters, groovy music, and exciting battles. Among the games I've played, it certainly stands out, and no other game quite feels the same as it. But now there's Everhood 2, the sequel to Everhood. Does Everhood 2 feel just like the original? Not quite. Everhood 2, while sharing the same psychedelic aesthetics and mechanics of the original, seems to have different goals for the tone of the world and narrative. Everhood 2 is about twice the size of the original, with a wild mix of worlds and characters. It takes several themes and concepts from the original game and expands on them. The world's nature as a place between life and death, somewhere entangled with the subconscious, is explored further. The battle mechanics have the same basic format, but you can now absorb different amounts of energy to do different levels of attacks. Occasionally, you also battle as different characters. You can also equip talismans that give you buffs, different weapons, and upgrade them or yourself for the course of the game with gems or XP. It also has some cosmetic options like hats or hairstyles. Everhood 2 essentially adds more RPG mechanics to the Everhood battle system, and they're a nice way to shake things up. For me, one of the most notable differences between the two games is the tone. Both of them are surreal, of course, but they're different kinds of surreal. The first Everhood feels like a small, middle-of-nowhere town that is half abandoned. The soundtrack of that game supports that tone. Everhood 2 doesn't quite feel this way. The tone of the original Everhood hits a special sweet spot for me, but I like how Everhood 2 moves in a different direction. Everhood 2 feels like a wild night on the town, checking out the vibrant nightlife and getting into trouble. The soundtrack branches out into some very funky directions, more so than the original's quirky electronic soundtrack. Everhood 2 doesn't quite recapture the feel at first, but I think it takes a fun new direction. There are also some differences between the narrative approach of both Everhoods. Let's get into what I mean by that. I'm about to cover the story of Everhood 2, so if you want to avoid spoilers, you may want to avoid the rest of this video. You enter the world of Everhood 2 as a straight-up light being, not contained within a puppet or anything. This is the same kind of being that Pink was in the first Everhood. They're a kind of human soul that takes on a vague monochrome humanoid form. The first thing you do is get into trouble with the root of all evil. You're rescued by a raven called Raven, who wants you to become stronger so that you can help them. They say that you are likely dead, and can now travel between worlds. Still, you are stuck in a cycle letting go of the illusions of senses until there's nothing but the mind. The way to break out of this cycle is to slay your mind dragon, which is made of negative thoughts. Upon defeating the mind dragon, you acquire a soul weapon, which is needed to defeat the root of all evil. Besides this quest to slay the mind dragon, you can also interact with other characters, worlds, and side quests to become stronger. One character you meet is Sam, who you help to pull a heist on the Veggie Kingdom. Sam appears several times throughout the game. One place you meet them is on a series of quests that take place on an alien planet. You travel in time on this planet in 1,000-year increments, starting with rescuing them from being enslaved and witnessing their rise and fall as a civilization. Sam seems to be involved with slavers at first, but they later try to help the aliens rebuild their livelihoods after the apocalypse. In the end, the aliens don't last, but they become another soul weapon, in an effort to fight the evil that plagued them, which has now fled to another world. In the alien questline, you also meet Riley, a tiny frog looking for someone called the Boatman. They join you and offer to become your voice, since you don't talk. Another notable character is Irvine, who travels dimensions and searches for treasure of Sam. In a quest inside of a video game console, Irvine consumes a virus and you must defeat them in battle. Other characters include Lucy, a voluptuous slime person who seems kinda sinister, and Bobo, a goopy purple snake person who also seems kinda sinister. Many of the game's side quests center around the Hilbert Hotel. Over the course of the game, you're able to visit several rooms of the Hilbert Hotel, which each have small quests or experiences. Upon defeating your mind dragon, you gain access to Sam and Irvine's interdimensional hangout. Sam and Irvine want to travel dimensions with you, but Raven insists that you continue your main quest, with the Mushroom Bureau as the next step. When you overcome the trials of the Mushroom Bureau, and survive a wild battle with the Divine Mushroom, you'll learn that life is an illusion, but you can still appreciate what you have and trust in yourself. Raven is extremely baffled by these events. They don't know what to think anymore, so they leave. You are left to travel with Sam and Irvine. You are on a journey to find the world of Pandemonium. You eventually find out that in order to find the location of Pandemonium, you must find God. You undergo a ritual to board the ship of the Boatman and find God. You are stopped by a being called Dimitri, a purple goop snake with seductive eyes, who may be working with the root of all evil. Upon defeating them, the Boatman opens the way to Pandemonium, and tells you that God can be found past there. I thought that you had to find God first before finding Pandemonium, but oh well. Sometimes in the plot of this game, things just happen. If you think about it, maybe we're all God, collectively, together, as a single consciousness. Before you can continue to Pandemonium though, Bobo returns, and they don't like you. They send you to a place they call the Sludge. You're whisked away, and it may look familiar. It's the Mushroom Forest from the first Everhood. Shortly, you discover that the rest of the world of Everhood 1 is there as well. There's Midnight Town and the castle and everything. Apparently, the first game took place in just a small section of the world of Everhood. The denizens meet you, and ask you to vanquish a fearsome creature that has them under lockdown. The lost spirits of Everhood want you to spare the creature, but when the monster, a puppet called Yellow, hurts Blue, they battle with you. Upon defeating Yellow, the puppet body breaks open to reveal Light Being, just like Pink from the first game. In my playthroughs, the Light Being was lime green, though presumably, depending on the color of your player character, the Light Being may actually be pink. So what's the Light Being from Everhood 1 doing in the yellow puppet? This has to do with the New Game Plus ending of Everhood 1. In the first game, if you do another playthrough after beating the game, Sam appears, and asks you to help find treasure. This leads to the body of Red being broken, and Pink emerging. Pink then meets with Professor Orange to gain a new puppet body, Yellow. Since Pink is scared to confront their task to kill the souls of Everhood, they voluntarily enter the body of a puppet. But now the puppet has gone on the rampage. After the Light Being is freed, you find them unstable. They ask for your help, which involves engaging them in battle. Upon defeating them, they turn to another soul weapon. Rasta Beast is relieved that the Light Being received help, which is mixed with bittersweet feelings because they are no longer entirely themselves. Now that you've finished the task of the inhabitants of Everhood, you're back with Sam and Irvine about to venture to Pandemonium. When you reach Pandemonium, you're able to start your journey to God. You eventually reach Bobo again, who claims that they are God. They fight you, but eventually they just give up. The Shade appears, and says they have run out of puppets. Now, reality is going haywire. You meet with Sam, Irvine, and Raven, but they barely know what's going on. Eventually, you confront the Shade again. There's a battle, but then they kind of just hang out with you, playing farming sims, talking about art, and then send you to the end of time. After a battle at the end of time, you wake up. Riley urgently wants to move forward. You reach the Shade again, who tells you that you are God. The both of you are conflict and resolution. Their attention is drawn to Riley. They ask if Riley wants to become a god. Riley starts to transform just as they're answering yes. Now, Riley has started a reign of terror. Sam and Irvine help you through Riley's messed up world. When you reach Riley for the final time, they're monologuing to Raven about collective consciousness and how life, death, and senses are vain illusions. Their attention is turned to you. You fight, and upon defeating them, they burst into goop as the Shade emerges from within them with an oops. They allude to the custom experiences at the Hilbert Hotel in DD's Arena, and then time cycles back to just before your journey to God. And that's the end of the story of the game. So that's the end of the game. Some random frog became God, and evil incarnate turned them into goop and said oops. Well, I guess that leaves an impression, but not the same kind of impression as the ending of the first game. The ending of Everhood 2 kind of feels like an anticlimax, especially compared to the mind-blowing ending of the first game. In the first game, you had to confront the morality of your actions, and the world in spectacular fashion. Then you got a heartwarming goodbye from all the characters you met along the way. It was an emotional roller coaster in the best way. The ending of Everhood 2 kind of feels like chaos for the sake of chaos. There are characters that claim you're destroying the world, which I guess is similar to Everhood 1, but really you don't know what you're doing. You're finding God, but also becoming God, but also fighting God, but also finding the root of all evil. Maybe somewhere in there you're destroying the world, but it's hard to tell. One of my favorite things about the Everhood games is the surreal psychedelic absurdity. But the strength of the first game that I think the second lacks is something to ground in the narrative. It's weird to say, because Everhood 1 is such a surreal experience, but it's actually pretty straightforward to follow along with the narrative. In the first half of the game, your goal is to find your arm. In the second half of the game, your goal is to free the souls of Everhood. Everything you do in the game is in service to these goals. Even though your goals in Everhood are fantastical, they're straightforward to relate to, because they're grounded in what people naturally want. It's natural to want your arm back if you're missing it. Freeing the souls of Everhood is pretty abstract sounding, but it's grounded in a desire for a peaceful existence and purpose. Even though Everhood is a very surreal story, you still know why you're doing what you're doing. Some of the goals you follow in Everhood 2 are to find Pandemonium and meet God. Why are you doing these things? Who knows? You're kind of just along for the ride. In Everhood 1, something that keeps the goals grounded is having an idea of what you'll get by meeting them. By getting your arm back, you'll take back what's rightfully yours and regain a complete body. By freeing the souls of Everhood, you'll achieve eternal peace. But What do you get by reaching Pandemonium? What do you get by meeting God? There's never really an answer to these questions besides, it'll be cool, I guess. You're told that these are your goals, but not shown that these are your goals. There are some more grounded goals in Everhood 2, such as overcoming your Mind Dragon or defeating the root of all evil. Overcoming the Mind Dragon is implied to allow you to achieve some sort of enlightenment and strength. Defeating the root of all evil implies getting rid of evil in the world, which sounds nice. While these goals are present, they become sort of sidetracked in the story. Defeating the Mind Dragon really just lets you continue the game. It doesn't really change the course of the game, like getting your arm in Everhood 1 does. When you get your arm back in Everhood 1, you get a whole new quest and must achieve your destiny. When you defeat the Mind Dragon in Everhood 2, you're stronger and maybe more enlightened, but it's hard to tell. In the second half of Everhood 2, you kind of forget that defeating the root of all evil is your goal. Instead, just face whatever's in front of you. When you encounter the root of all evil, the Shade, the embodiment of conflict, you never defeat them, time just loops. This fits some of the game's themes of life, death, and climaxes being an illusion, but still feels anticlimactic. Something that may explain why Everhood 2's story isn't as strong could be the goals of the development. It's worth mentioning that Everhood 2 was designed for custom experiences. The Hilbert Hotel allows for custom levels, and the arena allows for custom battles. I've not played with custom experiences in the game, but I think it's really cool that the option is there. Everhood is the right combination of having a distinct battle system that is also straightforward in concept. It's ideal for modding. There's logic to the story of the game looping at the end so that you have the option to play through custom experiences. Going back into the world to play custom experiences would feel weird if the story had a more final ending like Everhood 1. I understand the logic, but judging Everhood 2's story on its own merits, removed from the context of custom experiences, I think it's weak. Despite my problems with Everhood 2, I still like it. It's fun to interact with the world and characters, and the battles are engaging. It's a game that wants you to go along the ride, and I think it's best enjoyed playing it on those terms. The game still has some highlights for me. The microscopic realm and alien civilization are very interesting levels. The battle through Divine Mushroom at the Bureau is spectacular, both visually and musically. Bobo's boss music slapped way harder than I think anyone would have expected. It was great to see the Everhood 1 world again. Everhood 2 also experiments more with its visuals. 3D models appear a fair amount, and they add to the quirky feel of the game. The Pocket Dimension realm also makes fun use of disorienting perspectives using 3D. Sam is a significant highlight of Everhood 2. I like the character arc in the alien civilization storyline. It's implied that they have a history with one of the slavers, Fuego. They call each other cousins, they're both felines, and there's some musical overlap between them. Sam may have once exploited the aliens for treasure, but for whatever reason, they don't anymore. Perhaps they weren't satisfied by the outcome of those deeds. As the storyline progresses, they start to help the aliens. They protect them from the monsters after their apocalypse, and help them build a new village. They even try to train the aliens to defend themselves from the slavers and the God Machine, an artificial intelligence that the aliens created that eventually led to their downfall. At the end of the storyline, Sam reflects on how this whole thing has been an effort to find purpose, but they didn't find one. Still, they seem changed from these events. They've grown from a simple sly rogue to someone who may help others. I still enjoy the smaller components of Everhood 2. It's just the overarching narrative of it that feels weak to me. The plot of Everhood 2 may be weak, but there's also themes that it communicates, and I think these themes are interesting to analyze. So what is the point of Everhood 2's story? There are several characters you meet over the course of Everhood 2, and each one brings different points to the story. Let's start with Riley. They're your companion throughout the game, and they hang out in your inventory, kind of like Blue from the first game. Still, Riley isn't nearly as interesting to me as Blue, at least on the surface. I love Blue's rude little attitude, but excuse me while I date this video, Riley just doesn't have the riz. I don't know what their personality is supposed to be. They're kind of meek, but kind of determined. Most of the time when you interact with them, they just say, "Strange times, eh?" How insightful. Still, Riley's presence as not only your companion, but also the antagonist at the end must mean something. I think it comes down to what they say when they join you after defeating the Mind Dragon. They offer to be your voice. Earlier, Raven says that your quest involves finding your voice, so the concept of your voice is clearly important. Let's consider that Riley is symbolic of the character's voice. What does that mean? At the end of the game, Riley becomes the villain, and an enemy to the player character. If Riley is the player's voice, that means that the player and their voice are now in opposition. This could mean that the player has cast aside their voice in some way. Everhood 2 is about casting aside the illusions of one's senses, and finding the truth deep within oneself. Like the senses, one's voice could be considered a superficial aspect of one's identity. Riley becoming an antagonist is simply a part of the player character's identity being broken down to its core. Voices are known for saying things, so if Riley is symbolic of the voice, what does Riley say? At the end of the game, Riley talks a lot about collective consciousness, and claimed that individual experiences and identities are illusions and vanities, and that oneness is the truth of reality. Riley seems to have a pretty nihilistic take on this philosophy. They seem to believe that since material experiences are illusions, that means they don't matter, and suffering can be inflicted freely because it means nothing. The player character may represent a more optimistic view of this philosophy. This is the idea that just because the world is made of illusions, that doesn't mean that it doesn't matter. Experiences that mean nothing in the end can still be appreciated. Even though our perceptions may not be true, they can still be trusted. It's unclear what's going on in the player character's head, but this more positive philosophy seems to be the point of Everhood 2, and it's one that's opposed by Riley as an antagonist. I think Riley's role in the story also says some interesting things about choice, especially in comparison to the first Everhood. The player character in Everhood 2 doesn't really make choices, not of any consequence anyway. They kind of just go along with whatever else is happening. The player doesn't choose Riley, Riley chooses them. Since Riley is symbolic of the voice, the player doesn't choose their own voice, their voice chooses them. This can be compared to how choices work in Everhood 1. In that game, Pink distances themselves from their choices. They want to free the souls of Everhood, but they know that others will hate them for that decision, so they let Red do those actions instead. Pink struggles with ownership over their choices, while the player character of Everhood 2 doesn't seem to have choices in the first place. Most things are chosen for them. This could be tied to ideas of free will or the lack of thereof. If everyone is a collective consciousness and there's not really any individuals that can make decisions, everyone just does what the collective consciousness decides. While Riley is a major antagonist at the end of the game, the main antagonist for the whole game would probably be the Shade, the root of all evil. They have an interesting relationship with the player character. They're pretty much evil incarnate, and you get into trouble with them multiple times. Still, the Shade is also kind of a goofy goober. They seem to see you as a plaything, someone to have fun with. Even the puppets that the Shade influences, including Dimitri, Bobo, or Riley, are seen by the Shade as toys. The Shade isn't the malicious or power-hungry kind of evil. They're the kind of evil that has a lack of perspective and sees strife as a fun game. Something that's made clear over the course of Everhood 2 is that the Shade and the player are two opposing forces. One is conflict and one is resolution. My assumption is that the Shade represents conflict. They're behind several situations that the player character must fight through and resolve. The entire world seems to be shaped by this battle between conflict and resolution. Those ideas are defining parts of the world. Still, while conflict and resolution defines law of the world, it is still meaningless. When you beat the game, it just loops back to earlier in the story. The cycle of conflict and resolution creates chaos, but it doesn't really create change. Things happen and strife emerges, but the world isn't fundamentally transformed. I think that conflict and resolution connects to the game's theme of illusions. Conflict and resolution are just more illusions that people think define the world, even though they don't. Raven also has some connection to the ideas of conflict and resolution. To me, Raven is symbolic of the concept of a quest for purpose. They embody the idea that life is a journey to achieve a grand purpose, and it will follow an arc of growth, climax, and conclusion. When you meet them, they tell you about your quest to defeat the Mind Dragon, and eventually confront the root of all evil. It doesn't seem that far off from the quest you get to free the souls in Everhood 1. Something is wrong with the world, and it's up to you to discover your destiny and save everyone. Raven is focused on this quest. When Sam and Irvine try to distract you with side quests to find treasure, Raven demands that you ignore them. Sam thinks Raven's ideas are crazy, but Raven sticks to what they believe. The turning point for Raven's character is the Mushroom Bureau. Raven seems to expect that the Mushroom Bureau is an important step in your quest. Once they enter the Bureau, though, they are restrained and taken away. Once you finish the Bureau, you're reunited with Raven, and they are completely disoriented. The lessons you learn at the Bureau essentially boil down to life and purpose being an illusion. This contrasts Raven's belief that life has a grand, meaningful purpose. After this, Raven stops being your guide, and stands by as you do your late-game quests, helping you as needed. I think there's also an element to Raven's story where they betray you. Apparently, them sending you to the Mushroom Bureau is a deception, but the significance behind this was lost on me. I never learned what the Raven was trying to achieve from this deception, and there's no expectation set for the player of the Bureau that would be subverted from the deception anyway. I guess doing the trials in the Bureau was a deception, but they just seemed like what I was expecting anyway. I would gain some enlightenment, maybe do some fights, then move on in my quest. That's just a normal Tuesday in Everhood. You're told that Raven tried to betray you, but not shown that they tried to betray you. Still, Raven apologizes for the deception later, and it's chill because I didn't even feel betrayed anyway. I just want to acknowledge that part of Raven's character, but it's not what I want to focus on. I identify with Raven's reaction to the Mushroom Bureau. Maybe not when it comes to the Bureau specifically. The Mushroom Bureau is the kind of strange experience that I was looking forward to. I would compare Raven's reaction to the Mushroom Bureau to how I felt when I first finished the game. I was expecting this grand quest, comparable to the first Everhood, but instead I experienced several chaotic events and didn't know what to make of it. The lack of logic or reason in Everhood 2's ending left me confused. It occurred to me in my more recent playthrough that the lack of reason is kind of the point. Life doesn't make sense. Quest and purpose are an illusion. Things just happen. Life is made of illusions. We're all just the universe observing itself, perceiving it as individuals even though we're all one. Conflict, resolution, and identity are made-up concepts for us to make sense of the world. Still, Everhood 2 makes a point to say that just because meaning is an illusion, doesn't mean we can't believe in meaning. The pursuit of purpose is futile, but we should still pursue it. A big part of being human is engaging with illusions as if they're the truth. When I first played Everhood 2, it felt like I wasn't interested in having a point in the same way Everhood 1 did. Upon further analysis, it seems to me that the game does have a point. I think the game is still saying some interesting things about the human experience, and the form of the game follows the message. Everhood 2 has strong themes, characters, and experiences. I just think the plot that constructs these parts together isn't as impactful as I'd like it to be. But you know something else that has strong parts but weak overall construction? Life. Life doesn't have a plot, it's just a series of things happening. Life is something to be enjoyed, and I think Everhood 2 is also enjoyable. It's still a story, and I think something stories often need to do is to be a bit unrealistic and have a plot in order to be strong. But for a moment, let's set that aside. I had fun with Everhood 2. The worlds are fun, the characters are fun, the music is fun. It still made me think just like the first game did. I still think it's worth checking out if you enjoyed Everhood 1. Just go in with the expectation that the story isn't quite going for the same thing. I hope you enjoy this analysis of Everhood 2. I found it interesting to break down both the weaknesses and strengths of the game. Goodbye everybody. Sam, not the cat from Everhood, but the guy with sunglasses in my outro, that Sam, wishes you well.